I talk to my mom fairly frequently, and my mom has a dog that's about 2 years old now, I think. It's a mutt. It's like a bigger thing. And she loves chasing squirrels, as dogs do. Well, today she caught one, and my mom grew up in a farm, and like she has like this weird. I don't find it weird because I grew up around this, but like I think other people find it weird. Mom's just been like texting me like photos of this dying squirrel in the backyard and be like, "Oh my god, it's still alive!" like every hour or so.
Oh no.
And so I'm just like, I have pictures on my phone now of just a bloody squirrel just inactive.
Holy shit.
And my mom's like, "Oh, it's still going. Look, it's twitching." I'm like, "Mom, just put that damn thing out of the misery." What are you doing?
Man, you're much like National Geographic.
Yeah, kind of. And it's just like, that's a relationship between me and my mom. We have like a lot of people would probably find that very disturbing and nightmare inducing, and me and my mom are looking and going, "Oh fuck, look at that thing."
all you need now, actually, before we were recording, because of something related to video game voice acting, Caitie and I were talking about deepfake voices.
Oh, yeah.
All you need now is like a deepfake Morgan Freeman voice to do the narration on this nature documentary.
And the squirrel still going. I can't even pretend.
The once mighty squirrel is now facing its final moments.
Oh Lord. So yeah, that was my morning, just looking at pictures of dying squirrels.
So is the squirrel? What is the latest update on that? Is the squirrel dead?
I haven't actually looked at my phone. Here, let's
You know what would be incredible is by the time we get done recording, your mom texts you like, "The squirrel's alive."
Okay, my last squirrel update was at about an hour ago, and it was alive, so it could be dead. Oh, sorry. My dad texted about 30 minutes ago saying the dog went outside and ripped it up. Right away. So, apparently the dog went back in for seconds.
That dog went in to finish the job.
Yeah, my parents.
So I guess what you're saying is that the dog initially killed the squirrel, realized that there were some improvements that it could make, and it did a squirrel kill remaster. It sounds like what. You see what I did there, Caitie? That was that's what they call a segue in the radio business. That's it's us masters, just the masters of a craft here.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I did give you a challenge of dead squirrels to the Mass Effect remaster, and you rose to the challenge. I'll give you that.
Challenge accepted.
All right, so we're talking about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition now that it is out and about. I have not gotten to play it because I have been busy with my own thing. I still need to finish Cyberpunk. So Jordan, you've been a champ streaming like almost every day this week, just to get through it. And I'm going to shame you a bit. You also bought it on console. So you've been playing it on console, you've been playing it on PC for yourself, and then you've also been streaming it. So you've at least have 3 different playthroughs going through. Is that correct?
Oh, so only 2 different playthroughs. I actually don't have a separate PC playthrough. I've only got the console one, which is I guess you could say my official personal MELE playthrough at this point, and then I've got the PC version stream.
Okay. So, for the most part, this is your baby, so take it away. Tell me how it's been going.
Well, first of all, I will cop to my shame. I did, in fact, break down and buy MELE twice. I had already had it pre-ordered on Origin, and then basically, Thursday night, right? Like, I'm thinking, man, tomorrow I'm going to get to play MELE. Like, this is going to be great. All I got to do is just go to bed, wake up, wait a couple hours, and the game will be out. And then, like, I was on Twitter, and somebody just said, like, it's live. Like, PSN, it's live. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. And I was just immediately... Because I had 2 weeks in advance looked at, like, when is Origin MELE version live or whatever. And it's, like, 10 a.m. my time. And I'm like, they're not doing it at midnight? Like... Okay, fine, worldwide release. Maybe they want it at a set time. And then that night, I immediately was like PSN release time, and it was like midnight on the East Coast, which was 11 p.m. my time. And I'm like, oh, how much do I really like money? You know, like, I mean, what am I going to do? Just spend it on food? Whatever. And so I'm just like, fuck this, I'm buying this thing. And so I immediately went out, bought it. Thank God for fast internet, because I had the whole thing downloaded in like 30 minutes.
Wow.
Well, the progressive actually not the whole thing. The progressive download allows you to play ME1, and it still keeps downloading ME2 and 3.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which is really great. So I was like, yes, that's the smallest file size anyway. And I played that until like 2 a.m. that night. And it was gorgeous and brilliant. And I gotta say, like, that's probably a good place to start, because like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, I was crying and all this other stuff, but like, it was oddly emotional in a way, because it was like, it looked so good, and it was immediately beyond what's been done in modding. I will say that for ME1. Like, the real-time reflections and the way that the lighting was different and the new models and the new textures. My initial reaction through the first few minutes and the first, let's say, hour of ME1 was like, this borders on a remake. At times, it's definitely just a remaster of a game that came out in 2007, and it's got a fresh coat of paint on it. But there are certain moments and certain angles and certain scenes where you're like, this looks better than Andromeda looked, and like quite in pieces, right? Okay. Like, and I'll explain what I mean. Like, that's definitely at a zoomed in level. I don't mean overall, because it's a completely different engine. But there are moments where it feels brand new. And to play Mass Effect 1 again in a way that makes it feel new was just like, it was awesome. Like, it was honestly more than I expected. I would say safely that it exceeded my expectations, especially in those first couple of hours. After that, you know, it kind of comes back down to earth a little bit. But in those first couple hours, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm playing Mass Effect again, and it feels new. That's after 13 playthroughs. I thought I would never have that feeling again.
What, you finished all of Mass Effect 1 now at this point, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What would you say is maybe like a part of the game, or maybe just one specific like mechanic or something, but what feels the most different?
I would definitely say controls and like the shooting mechanics. The aiming feels better. It feels snappier. It feels more responsive. It feels punchier. Like, it has more of the recoil feels a lot more like Mass Effect 2. The weight of the aiming feels a lot. And when I say weight, I just mean like the responsiveness of it, the movement speed of the reticle, the drag, the magnetism, if you want to call it aim assist. I would say the aim assist is actually probably a little bit too strong for my liking.
Now, is that just on the... Because I know sometimes consoles have worse aim assist than PC. So is that on both, or just the console?
I am playing with a controller on PC, and I think it feels the same, honestly.
Okay.
The reason why I say it's too strong is that if you're ever trying to aim for the environment, like if you're trying to shoot a canister that can explode because a husk is walking by it, like it snaps you hard to the husk. And I'm like, well, I don't want to shoot the husk. I want to shoot the explosive thing that's next to it. And so that can be kind of annoying, but that's a very minor gripe. Overall, I would say that like the way the reticle moves and the weight of the guns and all of that feels a lot better, and that's probably the biggest difference on gameplay.
Okay. What about the Mako? I know a lot of people had questions about that and how bad it was.
Oh, that's a great question. So the Mako, and I've said this on stream, it feels better. The controls are better. Like, good job, go team, because they made it better. It's not, but all due respect to what they did on the Mako, the gameplay of traversing uncharted planets in Mass Effect 1 still isn't very good.
Okay.
The terrain is still largely, it was procedurally generated. For those people that don't know, in Mass Effect 1, they didn't go through and hand design all of those mountains and whatever. They had a procedural generation, and I think maybe they touched it up by hand on some of the planets. So you're going over terrain that is just, it's really rough terrain, and maybe it's even realistic that it's very hard and frustrating to go over that terrain, but if you're trying to collect all the minerals and do all the different collection quests that you need to do, it's just a pain in the ass, like trying to drive over that crap with the Mako. No matter what they improved or didn't improve with the Mako, it was always going to be not great, and the Mako itself the controls are better, but and I know they did change some things about the physics of it, but it still feels like a skateboard. Like, it feels like a suspensionless skateboard when it's going over bumps.
Okay.
And if you look at the Mako, it looks like it has big giant shocks, and like it should be able to sort of, those 6 wheels should give you, with appropriate suspension, should give you the ability to sort of climb, and it should have a little bit of movement over the unevenness. And instead, it's just like you're trying to take a surfboard over those rocks.
I mean, that in its own right could be kind of fun, though, just surfing on a planet's surface.
I mean, yeah, people have always said, oh, I think the jankiness of the Mako is fun. And I actually agree with that if you're trying to drop down onto a planet and just throw the Mako off mountains. That is fun. But if you're actually trying to get to that one spot on the map where you think minerals are at, it's frustrating as all hell.
See, I only remember frustration from the Mako. Is it Mako or Mako? I always said Mako.
I say Mako.
Okay. Maybe this is like Melee. I say Melee, you say MELE. I say Mako, you say Mako. Or just nothing's consistent. So why not?
Mako is a character from one of the Avatar shows, isn't it? Like Korra, maybe Legend of one of those. I don't know.
I know Sailor Jupiter's Japanese name is Makoto, so they call her Mako-chan as like a shortening of that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, maybe that's where I'm getting it from. But anyway, Thresher Maws. I heard they chase you now. Is that a thing?
Oh, so Thresher Maws. Yeah, Thresher Maws are another good gameplay update. Thresher Maws were pretty... I wouldn't say they were boring, but they were definitely easy to beat in the first one. Like, you just circle strafed them, and whenever they went underneath the surface of the planet you were on, just, keep moving around, and most of the time that was it. You wouldn't get killed. Now they do 2 things differently that are very significant. When they shoot at you with their little acid spit attack, it actually leads its shots really well. Oh. So if you're driving in a line or circling around it, like, it actually shoots ahead of where you're at with incredible precision. You've got to time your boost and like use the vertical rockets and the speed boost at the same time, and it still partially hits you. So like, you can't just circle strafe around it. And the other thing is that when it goes underneath the surface of the planet, you can see like the rubble or whatever, where it's making a line for you. Mm-hmm. And you've got to shoot the sensory tentacles that it pops up out of the ground. I guess that's how it knows where you're at. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to run from it while also shooting these other smaller tentacles that come up out of the ground so that it can't like follow you as well or something like that. It's more engaging. It's more fun. Thresher Maws are more fun to fight. And I think that was actually a really good gameplay design change that they did.
It's definitely like surprise like monster fights when I'm doing like a chill trying to drive a thing. Like, I hate that, so I hated Thresher Maws, and I'm glad it sounds fun, but for me it sounds like a nightmare. So
the good
I just want to be left alone in my car.
Yeah, and then you're just a peaceful drive in the Mako.
Yeah, there you go. I'm just gonna fling around. Oh no, I'm upside down. But yeah, okay. What else? What else do we have?
So I will say this about kind of talking about the graphics, which there are some good gameplay changes, as you just asked about. But I will say that a lot of it is graphical, right? Like, a lot of it is the fact that the game looks different. And depending on the type of player you are, that may or may not be the type of thing that makes it worth playing again. Mm-hmm. If you're someone who was like, hey, I love Mass Effect, but I don't really play games more than once. I just kind of play. I mean, I think most of the people who listen to our show are the type of people who have gone through games multiple times, even if not Mass Effect. But so for some people, it's like, hey, there's only really a few gameplay improvements. Are the graphics really worth coming back to it? And so for me, I think the answer is definitely yes for Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1 looks and feels very different from anything that I've ever experienced with it before, including playing it modded. Like, I've done all of the extensive graphic mods. Pretty much if there's been a texture or a graphic mod for Mass Effect 1, like I've played through it multiple times with those graphics on, and I think on PC that's always been a great option. Mm-hmm. For console players, they've never really had that option, and I'll say even as a diehard PC player, like this PlayStation 5 or even the PC MELE, like, it's now the definitive way to play Mass Effect. So it's just like running through it. I know we did an episode that kind of previewed some of these changes, but just talking about them now that I've actually seen them. The new models that they've made, like they didn't just do textures. Like some of the things that they've done is like actually created new models for like armor or some of the characters' faces, like the head models and stuff like that. They look fantastic. Like I don't just mean like fantastic, like they look fucking phenomenal. Like I was shocked at how good some of the character clothing looked, especially for like non-major characters. Like I expected the squad mates to look really good. I expected their faces and their default armors to look really good. But like walking in to some of the habitats on Eden Prime and talking to some of the scientists or the settlers that you find there, I'm like, holy crap, that doctor's uniform texture, like model that I redid, like that looks really good. That looks better than the clothing did in Andromeda. That's kind of what I was referencing when I said some parts of it look better than Andromeda. Like I want some modder to take that model and put it into Andromeda, please, because some of that stuff looks way better than what we've seen in any Mass Effect game ever. Some of the armors look phenomenal. Like Nihilus's armor looks super good. The like Kirahi's armor in the Solarian STG group on Vermeer, like the Solarian combat armor looks amazing. There's no armor in Andromeda that looks that good for a Solarian. Helmets look really good. Like helmets, and this kind of goes into like the way that they updated the lighting and the shadows, like the ambient occlusion. And so ambient occlusion is basically just how shadows appear over like uneven surfaces. So in particular, it looks really good with the contours of someone's face if there's a direct light source and shadow on it. But also helmets, right? Because like the little part of the inside of a person's helmet should be dark, but then there's a light source that's reflective on the outside, and as well as the visor glass transparency. God, the visors look so much better. I mean, this is visible in the trailer when they do the side-by-side of what visors used to look like in ME1 on helmets. Like, they looked stupid. Like, I never wanted to have the helmets on because they looked really dumb, whereas now, I think Ashley's face looks, this sounds mean, I think she looks better with a helmet on. I don't mean that to be like she's ugly. I mean, like, it looks like the shadows on the inner part of the helmet around their face look so good, and the transparency effect with the new lighting on the visors looks so good. Like, ambient occlusion plus lighting updates means that the helmets they just look really realistic on their faces. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, helmets look fantastic. I wanted all the characters to have helmets on the entire time.
Which that's actually an option you can do, right? To just have all the helmets on when they're equipped.
Yeah. For sure. So stuff like that, I was blown away by how good it looked. I honestly did not think it was going to look that good. The alien models in general. Okay, so the alien models in general, this is another thing that puts Andromeda to shame. I know we've gone a long time without having to reset the counter on things that Andromeda should have done better, but
here we go. Where's the calendar?
Reset the goddamn calendar. Because like Solarians, like the texture, like the different variations of texture on a Solarian face, right? Like not just the color of them, but some of them that have, I don't know how to describe it, like the scaly patches, or they don't, or like the degree to the roughness of their face. Like it looks like it. All the Solarians don't look alike. All the Turians don't look alike the way that they do in Andromeda. And so for the fact that type of work was done for a remaster is, again, not to bash Andromeda too hard, but it's like, what the hell were they thinking? Like, why couldn't they have that level of variation? And I guess, it's a different engine, right? It's harder to work in, I guess.
Yeah. And there's also time rushes and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. But, like, I get what you mean.
Yeah, like, so the aliens look, like, that's, to put it into more context for people, like, why that matters so much as a fan. I've been looking at Solarians and Turians and Asari for 14 years as a Mass Effect fan. They've never looked this good. Like that's exciting to me. Like I'm coming into this world that's so full of lore and story that I love, and the visuals are now up to a 2020 standard. Like it Mass Effect 1 to me, like when I say it borders on a remake, I'm not saying it would have won any awards for coming out in 2018 or something like that on the PlayStation 4, but it looks like it could have been a late entry into the last console generation. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't it doesn't hold up to like the PS5 and Xbox Series X games that are coming out for next gen, but it looks like a game that could have been out on last gen towards the end of the cycle, and it would have been like mid-tier good graphics, which is insane considering it's a remaster of a 2007 game.
Yeah, no kidding.
So like, yeah, that's just exciting. There are parts of the Mass Effect universe that have never looked this good as far as character models and armor textures and, like Elcor. Elcor look different. Like the model for the Elcor looks completely new in Mass Effect 1. Like they look jacked. They look like they're fucking buff. Like they got those boulder shoulders. They look like they've been at the gym. That's pretty funny to me. But when I saw it immediately, I was like, oh, from a lore standpoint, if they basically walk on their arms and they're like 8 feet tall and they're mountainous creatures, like, well, why wouldn't their arms be super muscular? Little details like that I appreciated. The Normandy looks absolutely fantastic inside and out, but especially on the interior, like seeing some of the reflections on the floor or the walls. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that part of the Normandy was always supposed to be shiny. That actually looks really cool.
Which, as a completely non sequitur here, but did you see they put the Normandy in No Man's Sky?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I don't play that game just because it's not like my cup of tea, but like that seemed really cool for people that play that and stuff. And like it looked really good in the promotional images.
Yeah, I have No Man's Sky. I played it for like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 hours because a friend of mine got me into it. I think it's a really good game, and that's really super cool. If I ever go back to it for a little bit, I'm going to be looking in there like, how do I get the Normandy in my game?
Maybe it's a timed. Maybe look it up sooner rather than later. Maybe it's like a timed exclusive. Like you have to go do a biddly boop or whatever.
Oh, you're right. It might be one of those seasonal things that I need to go into now. But yeah, that's a great. I'm glad that they did that tie-in for sure.
Anyway, that's me interrupting.
No, I'm glad. That's for No Man's Sky fans out there. Like, go check it out if you haven't.
Yeah.
Let's see. So let's talk about this too. The lighting changes, because that is one where there's been some negative response to, and you've seen some comparisons and side by sides that I think are really cherry picked, and like they're really focusing in on the one or two scenes that are probably objectively less aesthetically pleasing, let's put it that way. What they've done is that they've done a whole new lighting pass. Again, lighting and shadows are updated from a technical standpoint, and although they have, I think, done a pretty good job of maintaining the aesthetic and the artistic direction of all the scenes, there are some locations and some cutscenes that look pretty markedly different. Namely, what a lot of people have been complaining about is the fact that they don't look as quote-unquote atmospheric, or they don't look as moody, or the mood's different. And I think that what people are actually referencing specifically is that these scenes they're lighter. They're more brightly lit scenes and locations, right? So they don't look as dark. In some cases, I agree that makes them objectively less aesthetically pleasing and less atmospheric, but I don't think we should fall into this pattern of thinking that atmospheric means darker. The scene isn't always going to be better because it's darker. Sometimes the scene is more in tune with the atmosphere, hence atmospheric, if perhaps it should be more well lit or brightly lit. Not every scene should be darker, so I think that's number one. Some scenes, I think, probably were better with the darker lighting in Mass Effect 1 in particular. There are some scenes that people can go and look up screenshots on side by side where I go, that kind of looked more dramatic in the original. But by and large, what I would point out to people is that it's not bad because it's brighter. Sometimes brighter is actually better. There are scenes on board Sovereign right after Eden Prime where Saren and Benezia are talking on the ship. And in the original, to be quite honest, like I was always like, where are they? Like, where is the scene even taking place? Eventually, after like multiple playthroughs, I'm like, oh, they're on board Sovereign. But in the original, it looks like they're in a fucking black hole. Like, you can't see the background at all. Yeah. And in the remaster, it's like, oh, they're on a ship. That's an actual ship that they're on. Now I see this. Okay, that's good. And there's another scene during the Battle of the Citadel on board the Destiny Ascension where there's Asari crew members on the ship, and it's the same thing. It looks like they're in a black void. You can't actually tell where that scene is supposed to take place, whether they're on board the Citadel, whether they're on board a ship. you can gather from the context where they're at, but you can't actually verify visually where the hell they're at. Whereas in the remaster, it's still dark, but you're like, oh, they're on a ship. They're on the bridge of a ship. I can see what's behind them. I can actually see the background. I think that that's actually better if you can tell where the location is.
Uh-huh.
And then there were other scenes that no one to me is actually talking about that did actually get darker appropriately. There's a spot on the Citadel in the wards down in the marketplace where there's a lower market. And it's on the wards, and it's the lower market, so it kind of was always supposed to feel like it was maybe not full-blown a shady location, but definitely down more in the bowels of the wards, and that's actually darker, right? There's less light sources, it's more shadowy, and I'm like, oh, this actually looks better, and it was darkened up. There are places on Pharos, the docking bay, within the abandoned exogeny facilities, where it's also much darker, much more shadowy, much fewer light sources, and it looks better because the lighting's more realistic, but also, like, from a story standpoint, like, why wouldn't the exogeny building be darker? It's supposed to be abandoned. And in the original, like, the spot where you run into the VI and the Krogan that's trying to get the VI to work, that scene is super brightly lit in the original, and it makes no sense because that building is supposed to be like derelict and like abandoned. So in the remaster, it actually looks like there's emergency lighting, like there's very few light sources on. So I would point that out to people, is just don't just look at the scenes that got brighter, look at the ones that got darker, and overall I think that the new lighting passes are a net improvement across the board.
Okay. So some areas of not so great, but overall, like an A, a B, where like.
I'd go with an A.
Okay. That's still pretty good though.
Yeah, I'd say there's maybe only one or two scenes where I would go, I wonder if they can change that with a patch, to be honest. I wonder if they could do a patch to just darken up maybe the initial scene on the Normandy a little bit, and like one or two others. And I'd be happy with the lighting pass.
I wonder if they'll, like, do you know if they have planned, like, patches or stuff to, like, fix things? I'm assuming they would. Has there even been any yet? I don't know.
Yeah, the first patch came out. They changed minor stuff, but there was one issue, I think, with the ambient occlusion around eyes. Nothing nearly as bad as the issue with eyes in Andromeda, but it was kind of similar to that.
Okay.
Nowhere near as bad, but the shadowing needed to be a little bit more detailed on the eyes, and they did that. I mean, that was out within a week.
Okay. So I wonder, maybe they do go back and fix some of these changes we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think that would be kind of nice if they did.
Well, let's see. We went over graphics and gameplay. Is there anything else that you want to talk about with ME1, or did you want to go on to the other two?
Oh, there's so much. There's so much even on ME1. Let me see. Like, I guess just to cover, like, they talked about, like, the beautification passes, or like the actual level design changing a little bit, adding in more foliage, like, adding in things physically, like changing the geometry of the levels. I just want to call out the fact that, like, I think Eden Prime looks the best out of all of the locations that changed. All of the major locations, like all of the major planets you go to, have been updated. But Eden Prime looks phenomenal, in my opinion. Like, again, that was a big part of that feeling within the first hour or maybe two, where I was like, this is like bordering on remake territory for me personally. Some people will say it's not that good, but when I dropped down on Eden Prime, I'm like, this looks so much better as far as what they did to the changes of the level design, as far as adding more foliage and the differences to the lighting. I know some people, again, we're not a huge fan of this aesthetic change when it came to the sky not being red anymore. There's this very crimson looking sky in the original during Eden Prime, which looks kind of cool, but also doesn't make any sense as far as what's going on the planet at that point. And at first, I was not a fan of it. And on some level, I am sad that we're losing that over-dramatic visual style. But the new visual style with a regular-looking sky is more realistic. It's more lore-friendly. And in certain places, like the reveal of Sovereign, the first time you see Sovereign on Eden Prime, when it's taking up off the planet, that is such an iconic moment in the original that I was afraid it was going to lose something in the remaster, but it totally does not. If anything, I think I'm starting to like the visual of the remaster better.
Okay.
The scale is better, so like Sovereign actually looks bigger, for not just bigger, but like the scale of it just seems more appropriate and more realistic. And also the different color palette, in my opinion, I think it's aesthetically pleasing because of the contrast. Like whereas you have this unrealistic, very ominous crimson, lightning-stricken sky, and you've got this big dark ship, that definitely does look more dramatic as far as like, oh, it's a big evil ship in the sky. But the normal sort of bluish sky with a verdant, colorful planet, and then the dark, ugly alien ship, that looks more surreal to me. Mm-hmm. Like when I first saw it in the remaster, I was like, oh, what the hell? Like that looks so visually interesting because the planet actually looks beautiful, but Sovereign looks menacing. And so now there's a greater contrast, which I don't think it's inconsistent. I think I think it adds to the surrealism of the moment, and I kind of like it more now in the remaster. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think that Eden Prime overall is probably my favorite of the retouched up planets. Vermeer is the one that they hyped up the most. Is like, oh, we did a bunch of changes for the beautification and we added foliage and everything on Vermeer. I don't think Vermeer looks bad. I think it looks great, and I definitely do think it looks better, but I think I had higher expectations for it. To be honest, I think it just looks better, but it didn't blow me away. Like there's some more trees and stuff added in. You know, obviously all of the textures and all of the improvements that are throughout the game are there, so it looks good. But it didn't surprise me the way Eden Prime did. Mm-hmm. Therum surprised me a little bit, only because you spend such a small amount of time on the planet. I kind of thought they probably weren't going to do very much with it, but like the dirt textures and the lava textures are really, really good. Like that looks like, those look like textures that could hold up again in a modern release. That was something that was coming out now. The lighting and the particle effects that are added to Therum add a lot to the sense of the atmospheric sense of the environment. Pharos is kind of similar. Particle effects and lighting effects in Pharos look really, really good, and it actually adds to the feeling that the Zeus Hope colony on Pharos is really under attack and like under siege, so I really enjoyed that. And Noveria was fine. Noveria was improved, but I also thought they would have done more with Noveria, especially on the interior scenes in Port Hanshan. Like, basically, like, when you first walk into Port Hanshan, the fountain that's there right when you get past the security checkpoint was like, oh, that's cool. They added like lights behind the fountain. That looks really cool. Mm-hmm. And then they added seat cushions, and that's pretty much it. Like, in my opinion, like that's like, again, it looks better because all the textures are higher resolution. All of the lighting is redone. Great. But as far as a redesign to how that interior looks, like they really didn't change that much. Mm-hmm. So I thought they maybe could have done more with Noveria, especially because Port Hanshan is supposed to be this like really rich corporate leader area where there's a bunch of high-ranking corporate people hanging around, and like they were like, oh, I guess we should add leather seat cushions. Like, I mean, yeah, but you guys could have done a little more. But anyway, I mean, for a remaster, again, it's all really good. I like the fact that they retouched all of the major locations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now I'm just imagining what like the Dragon Age version of this would be like. I would want change, and how pretty everything would be, how terrible the deep roads would still be.
You even saying that makes me think, like, what would Denerim look like?
Yeah, man. Okay, well, I think like probably the biggest change to Origins would like Origins has like suffers from that like brown palette of the era, so like them kind of like updating that a little bit would be really just do a lot.
Oh, I mean the color correction of the color palette, totally.
Yeah. I don't want to harp on a what if Origins because I feel like that could be a whole episode on it.
I mean, we should write that down. Honestly, that might be kind of fun.
Upcoming next.
Because at this point, I'm thinking about that a lot, and I hope other people are too. And I think we probably should talk about that on a future episode.
Yeah, we'll touch spoilers, people. Shh. Anyway, well, okay. What are we missing anything else on?
Yeah, real quick. Let me run through a couple more things fast.
Go for it.
Stuff that I thought looked like maybe they didn't touch it very much at all, where it's like, oh, that still looks pretty rough. Ears and hands really look about the same as they did in 2007. Some of the hands, they're not in the shots very often, but when you see like a close-up of hands or someone's ears, like, oh, that still looks pretty pixely and rough.
But Bioware hands in general have always been pretty rough, I feel like. I can't think of, like, I don't know about Anthem and Andromeda very well, because I can't really think of hands, but, like, even Inquisition hands, like, it has, like, this, like, kind of obvious seam on it, and, like, the hands are kind of pointy in some places, and it's a little rough there. And, like, Dragon Age 2, it's just one big pixel, you know, like...
Yeah, the goddamn fingernails are the same color as the skin color, and you're just like, what the hell?
Well, except for Meryl's that are like, it's like a lot of and like for some reason, like in Dragon Age 2, the male hands have like this freckle on the hand for some reason that is just large and there, and you're like, why?
Yeah.
Like, I got a freckle on my hand, like almost in that same space, so like I can't like talk shit or anything, but like. It's all pixely and strange. That's what's weird about it. Like it looks like maybe 5 pixels dedicated to like 5 inches of skin. It just doesn't look good. Yeah, that hasn't changed apparently.
Yeah, so that doesn't look great. Shadow map resolution is still like inexplicably low. I've done a comparison on both PS5 and PC, and there are some shadows, particularly on the Presidium, that just look janky and blobby, and they look like 2007 shadows, and I don't know why they still look like that, because we've been changing that stuff in the modding scene on PC for years now. Like, it's a fairly simplistic change in one of the INI files to up the minimum and maximum shadow resolution. Now, again, I'm not trying to talk like I understand real game development. I'm sure there's a bunch of more things to do that the way you're supposed to do it, not just homebrew your own config file edits, but it's worked reasonably well in the modding community to just go in and change some of these config files and up the shadow map resolution, and it makes shadows look sharper in the sense of how they're resolving, but also softer as far as like, not looking so jagged. And so they don't look great on PC or on console, and it's not like it's struggling performance-wise based on the hardware. Like, I've got plenty of overhead on my CPU and GPU, and even on console, like the PS5 is not having any issues. Maybe they did that for PS4 and lower-end PCs to keep it manageable. But it's nowhere near, like, we can go into the config files for MELE and we can see what the actual values are, and it's nowhere near what we were raising it up to for modding.
Could you? I'm assuming that you could go ahead and mod Melee then to have those values.
I haven't tried it yet, but I'm assuming that's what people are doing on PC.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the Melee mods real quick. See if
now the console players, again, kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah, big rip there.
But I will say this in favor of the console players. Right now, I feel like I'm enjoying my PS5 playthrough more.
Why?
I think it looks better on PS5.
Why?
And yeah, that is the real question, right? Is why? And I'm having a hard time nailing it down. One of the things that I can definitely say is that, like, Captain Anderson looks better on PlayStation 5. And I don't know why. I don't know why his face texture in ME1 looks better. I don't have the right technical language to explain exactly why. It looks like how do I put this? The texture, maybe the bumpiness on the skin on some areas doesn't look as flat. It looks like it has a little more dimension. Maybe it's a difference in the model versus the texture. I'm not sure, but something about it just looks like it has greater dimension, and it looks like the lighting is playing off of it better somehow in the exact same scenes. And I've done it side by side on my PC and PlayStation 5. Something about Anderson just looks better. And I think in general, some of the face textures, maybe it's the way that the graphics processors process some of the lighting and shadow effects differently compared to the way that my NVIDIA card does on PC. Maybe it's even different per PC configuration. But for my PC and my PlayStation 5, I think that the game looks better for the most part on PlayStation 5, very slightly, but it is just a bit noticeable for me. And performance-wise, honestly, while I don't think that the PC is having any problems consistently, there are weird frame drops that have nothing to do with my hardware. Like, I've got CPU and GPU monitors running all the time when I play, and it's not like my GPU is hitting a bottleneck or my CPU and I'm running it on a fast SSD. I have plenty of memory overhead. Like, I've got overhead on all my components, and I'll still see drops from 60 FPS down to 50 for no reason on the Presidium. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, and granted, I don't have the benefit of a frame counter on PlayStation 5, but at this point, my eyes are pretty well attuned to FPS, so I notice 5 or 10 FPS drops, and I've had 1 or 2 very rare ones during combat on PlayStation 5, but otherwise it feels like it's been a totally locked frame rate, more so than on PC.
I wonder what the cause of that is.
I don't know exactly, except that we should remember that the PC ports of Mass Effect were always a little bit imperfect, because Mass Effect was a console game. I mean, remember, it was basically an Xbox 360 exclusive until the trilogy was over.
Really?
They did PC ports. Well, I think maybe the Mass Effect 1 PC port came out a couple of years after it definitely did not come out when the console version came out. And the game never came out on PlayStation until 2014 when they did a trilogy release on PlayStation 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Huh. I did not know that.
Yeah, and so the PC ports were always kind of an afterthought. They never had native controller support on the PC versions.
Which is kind of strange, which I'm assuming now it does, because you said you're playing with controller.
Yeah, thank God. They never had widescreen support. They never had controller support. Like, we always did that through mods. So, you know, that was always kind of a thing, and I think maybe it kind of a little bit still is, where the PC version actually maybe wasn't as much of a focus as far as performance is concerned. I will say, in the PC's defense, there are rare scenes, and I don't know how to establish the pattern here, but there are some scenes where the shadows and the color grading just looks a little bit richer. Like, there are some scenes where I go, oh, those shadows look like darker and sort of deeper than they do on console. But then again, and I'm running it on the exact same display, right? The same display that I'm playing on console. I've got that same thing hooked up to my PC. The only thing I can think of there is that I'm actually putting the PS5 at a disadvantage, because I'm playing on a 4K PC monitor and not a television set. And especially when it comes to shadows and things like that, consoles are really set up to run on a TV. Because TVs and monitors do work functionally different when it comes to stuff like that.
I don't know tech that well, so I didn't actually know that much, but good to know.
So the fact that I think it looks better on PS5 is actually kind of even more amazing, considering the fact that I'm not playing on a 4K TV. I'm playing on a 4K monitor, and the PC still only rarely looks better to me.
Well, now I gotta ask, like, are you gonna go, or maybe you already have a 4K TV so you can play this bad boy on it?
No 4K TV yet, but maybe at some point, maybe on a second PlayStation 5 playthrough, that might make sense.
But anyway,
okay, I know I want to get to Mass Effect 2, but last things, Mass Effect 1, gameplay stuff. Overall, I think that the aiming improvements and the cover stuff, that's all great. Woohoo, 2 thumbs up. I don't understand how some stuff got worse, but it got worse. The squad pathing and the AI and the squad commands have never been great, but holy
Did it
God.
get worse?
Enemy and squad AI pathing is bad, and I think at some points it feels worse than the original. Husks.
Now that's an improvement, because I remember it was pretty bad.
Yeah, so husks will sometimes run in circles. Like a tight little, instead of charging you, because they're melee enemies, they will literally get stuck, and they'll just do this thing where they just keep spinning around. And I'm like, that's really weird, and that sucks really bad, because that looks really bad. I'm like, good God.
That has to be one thing they are desperately trying to come out with a patch, because there's no way they saw that and be like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think hopefully they'll patch it, right? So you're right. That's what we should mention. We're recording this like 2 weeks after the game came out, and I hope that they end up patching it.
Yeah.
Squad AI, like sometimes you tell them to go and get behind cover, and it works as well as it did in the original, which is to say, not great. Other times, at times, your squad can become unresponsive. And what I mean by that is like I'll put them down in cover, they go set up in cover, and then I'll be trying to get Caden or somebody to use throw, and it's not on cooldown, and they're just not using it. And they won't use that power, and they won't shoot, and they won't move, and they won't do anything unless you hit the regroup button, in which case they just kind of start moving around wherever they want, trying to find their own cover that they prefer, and then they'll use the power, but they're also now sort of out of cover. So then you've got to reorder them back into cover, and it's really frustrating. Like, you kind of have to micromanage them in order to, especially on Insanity, like on a normal difficulty level, like whatever, just let them run around and do whatever they want. But on Insanity, if you don't want your squad mates to die, you have to micromanage them.
Now, I know we were talking about patches, but one thing I'll say to, I don't know, maybe temper expectations, like, Dragon Age Inquisition has something similar where sometimes your companions will just sit there and like they're in the middle of the battle and they just kind of go hit, and they're frozen, they won't move, nothing works, and the only way for them to get like moving again is you have to make them jump. I don't know why, but jumping makes it work. And that never got patched out. That's in the game to this day. I don't know if everyone encounters that, but it happens to me like all the time. Just suddenly look over and Blackwell is just like sitting there frozen in fear, and you gotta quick jump and you move on. But like this might something where it's here to stay, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
And who knows, like, you know, it was like a 40-hour playthrough of Mass Effect 1 on my PlayStation 5. Maybe I'm remembering the 10 times that it happened too much, or the 5 times. I don't even know if it was 10 times, honestly. But, like, it happened a handful to several times. Mm-hmm. It happened enough where I didn't think it was just a one-off or, like, 2 or 3 times. Like, it was at least several times where they became unresponsive.
Right, I wonder, like, how related that is to the Inquisition one, because it sounds pretty similar. What if like somehow, however they code companions, there's something there that lines up that causes this glitch. I don't know anything about coding, so I don't even know if that's possible. I know it's a completely different engine, but
yeah, and it's also not easy, right? I mean, it's a real-time action game, third-person shooter where you can manually control squad mates, and like there aren't actually that many games like that. Mm-hmm. So it's a hard thing to do, to create that movement pattern, and also like the companions have to be able to move on their own, but also they have to stop whatever they're doing and follow your commands exactly while doing that intelligently in a landscape where there's all this cover. So that being what it is, and then lastly, I'll just say this is not a good thing or a bad thing one way or another. Something about the remaster feels easier overall on combat.
Okay.
This is either I've gotten so good at the game that I'm just now a master of it, but this is like the best or the most powerful I've ever felt. And I've played multiple times on Insanity. Again, maybe I've just gotten so good at it that I've just mastered all the steps, but like my Shepherd at the end of this Insanity run, which is the hardest difficulty you can put the game on, like we absolutely demolished Saren in that final boss battle. Like, we demolished all of the Geth. Like, I wasn't even necessarily taking cover all that much. And I even have clips of it, thankfully, because I captured some of this stuff on my PlayStation 5. Like, there's 3 or 4 Geth juggernauts rushing at us, and it's just like, nope. Like, Garrus was so specced out. Like, I have Garrus and Ashley with me on the final missions, and they each took out, like, Geth juggernauts by themselves. Like, you just see their shield and health just peel through. And again, part of that is I've got them specced out really good. I've got all of the gear upgraded exactly how I want. It's partly that I've done multiple Insanity runs, but I don't think it's just that. There's something about Ellie that is either easier. Maybe they turn down the enemy health or something a little bit, or maybe it's just the fact that I was used to leaning into the jank of ME1 combat, whereas now I don't have to do that, and all my muscle memory from 2 kind of carries over. So maybe veteran players just have a sort of inherent advantage now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I have on ME1.
That was like the entire.
We're almost at an hour, yeah.
Well, you handed me your notes, and there's nothing else for Mass Effect 2 or 3, so I'm assuming you have less. Because have you played through 2 and 3 yet? I don't think you have.
No, so I've beaten Mass Effect 1. I basically beat it last night. Again, it was about a 40-hour playthrough. I did damn near everything. And I just started Mass Effect 2 last night and played a little bit this morning. And so I don't want to harp too much on this, but I do think it's worth stating because I don't think that I've heard a lot of other people talk about this when it comes to Mass Effect 2, and as well a little bit with Mass Effect 3, which I have way less hands-on time with, me personally. Mm-hmm. But when I started Mass Effect 2, my initial reaction was that this does not look as good as Mass Effect 1, that it actually felt like a step backwards from a visual standpoint. Mm-hmm. The reason why I think this is it's exactly what the developers stated, which is that most of their time remastering the actual game was spent on Mass Effect 1. Essentially what they did throughout the entire trilogy was that they took textures for a bunch of different stuff in the game, and they up-resed, or they up-converted the textures to be in higher resolution using like an AI process or like a machine auto up-res process. That's very similar to what modders have been doing, but the developers are able to do it with sort of a higher grade AI up-res process, I believe, is how they explained it. And also, they're up-converting them from the uncompressed original source files and not the compressed files that go into the packaged games that we all download and play. So they're able to do this better than modders. And in some cases, that automated process just looks really good and you don't have to do anything else. But in particular for Mass Effect 1, if I'm summarizing this correctly, what they were saying was that because the original source files for Mass Effect 1 were lower resolution to begin with, the automatic AI up-res, up-convert process is only able to do so much with those. Therefore, in Mass Effect 1, they opted to actually do some new textures and even new models from scratch, as though they were making a new game. And that's what I was talking about when I said some of the clothing and armor and character models look so good that I think they look better than what was done in Andromeda. Mm-hmm. Because regardless of what engine you're putting it into, whether it's Frostbite or Unreal, the models for Andromeda were made probably like 2015, 2016, 2017 when the game came out.
Yeah. So
some of this, and 4K was like a stretch goal in that era, whereas now 4K is becoming a standard. Mm-hmm. As far as what you expect the final game resolution to be running at, you have to raise the resolution of the individual assets. So some of the stuff in Mass Effect 1, because it was made from scratch, looks freaking phenomenal, whereas stuff in Mass Effect 2, I went through all of the notes that I could find about what was specifically changing in 1, 2, and 3, and I couldn't find any documentation or developer or notes that Bioware had released that people were reporting on that said that they made any new from-scratch textures for 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I believe all of the quote-unquote new textures and stuff that we're seeing in 2 and 3 is that AI auto-generated up conversion, and it looks really good. I'm not saying that Mass Effect 2 looks bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's about as good as Mass Effect 2 has ever looked. I would say it looks like the modded PC versions do, and maybe in some places slightly better, and maybe in some places slightly not as good. Mm-hmm. That's pretty damn good. If you're a console player and you've never had the chance to play a modded PC version, your jaw's probably on the floor and you're amazed at how good it looks. Mm. If you're a PC player, you're probably going, oh, that looks about as good as what we've had on PC. And in some rare spaces where they have like real-time reflections turned on and ambient occlusion is added and the lighting, okay, it does look better than the modded PC versions for sure. But sometimes you'll look in very closely at a texture and you'll go, I think that the allot, it's called, the name of the mod that everybody uses is called allot, which literally stands for a lot of textures. There's some places where the allot mod maybe looks better on one individual texture on like an armor or the N7 logo or a gun or something like that.
Okay.
But coming from Mass Effect 1 where some assets looked brand new because they were brand new, then looking at it in Mass Effect 2, it kind of felt like a step backwards, and that was disappointing to me. I don't know why I expected anything different. That's what the developer and publisher communicated they were doing, But just as an FYI, in case anyone else runs into that, I feel it's worth mentioning because I didn't quite prepare myself for that sort of pseudo step backwards in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about Mass Effect 3? Is it?
That is the right question. What about Mass Effect 3? That's what I was trying to check out. Like, I haven't gotten that far in my own personal playthrough, so I just like quick started a new game of Mass Effect 3 to look at the first, basically just the first level. Mm-hmm. And I will say that Mass Effect 3 looks better. Of course, it would look better than Mass Effect 2 slightly because it's a newer game. It always looked better than Mass Effect 2 because it was a newer game. But in particular, on the remaster, it looks like it benefited from that AI up conversion on the textures more so than Mass Effect 2. And I thought, well, why is that? And I would assume it's because if they're using the original raw, uncompressed versions of all these texture files, that because Mass Effect 3 was developed later, I'm assuming that the original file sizes are bigger anyway. Right? So they're up converting from a base that's already higher resolution in Mass Effect 3 than in Mass Effect 2. So it kind of sucks to say this because Mass Effect 2 is often considered the favorite of the three, but it feels like Mass Effect 2 is kind of stuck in the middle. Mass Effect 3 is new enough that the AI up conversion of the textures works better. And Mass Effect 1 was old enough that they had to do some stuff from scratch, but Mass Effect 2 was in the middle. Mm-hmm. So they opted to use mainly the same processes from 3, which don't work as well in 2, but they didn't do the full, well, not full, but they didn't create new assets for ME2 the way they did for ME1. Mm-hmm. And I think it shows. I think that when we look at this remaster, it's unfortunate because, they all look good. Like, they all look really good. They all look better, for the most part, better than they ever have before. But Mass Effect 2 is going to be the one that probably looks the least impressive. Mm-hmm. Which is unfortunate because a lot of people say that's the best one.
Yeah. It definitely is the fan favorite, I feel like. And maybe that's just because, like, I feel like there were a lot more choices in that, and the stakes kind of, I don't want to say the stakes felt higher, but, like, Mass Effect 3 had a lot of stakes, but everyone didn't like the ending because it kind of, like, converged all into one point. Or Mass Effect 2, like, the endings could be wildly different based on your choice. Like, I feel like what you did mattered in early game, like, actually mattered more to the ending, and maybe that's why. And, like, there was a bigger range of characters and romances, so why it wins over one. So I can see why it's the favorite. But yeah, I guess, I mean, to be honest, I feel like from what you've said, it's overall still seemed like a good upgrade to Mass Effect 2. And, like, maybe not everything is perfect, and who knows, maybe they realize that and they'll come back and add something to it. Like, I don't even know what they're thinking of post launch. I wonder if they would add anything new. Do you think they would add anything new? Like, I know like they've changed, like, Tally's photo in that, but, like, I don't know. And would you even want that?
Oh, hell yeah, I want everything. I want everything Mass Effect. Like, at this point, I want it all. I think that there was very, very vague, there's little allusions to things that weren't in there before, but besides that, there's no such thing that really constitutes the categorization of new content. But I feel like there's some secrets in there that are not being shared. Like, I wonder if maybe after a few weeks, someone's going to find something that is like an Easter egg reference to, I'm not going to say Andromeda, but just like some references between the game. Like, maybe there's a reference in Mass Effect 1 that wasn't there originally that references something in 2 or 3. I'm willing to bet maybe something like that will happen. Okay.
Which, if you've played the games and you've noticed something like that, please comment below. We'd love to hear it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So yeah, I will say that too on Mass Effect 2. I mean, there are improvements to the squad companions and stuff like that, like the new hair. Well, I don't know if it's a new hair model, but the textures on Miranda's hair are definitely the upgraded ones. And maybe it's a different model on her hair. Something about Miranda's head looks different, and I don't think it's better. Oh, her head looks weird. Like something, and I think maybe it's not her head, it's the shape of the hair a little bit is different. Uh-huh. It looks like a different hair model, to be honest, slightly. Like, they tried to do it in the same style to keep it consistent, but it looks like it was made new, and it makes her head maybe look smaller or more square, and something about her head does not look
I mean, I already thought her head looked kind of funky. Well, now I gotta look this up. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, and it's interesting too if maybe somebody has a side by side from the original because
the hair is definitely different. That one is definitely changed because you can see it in like the strands of her bangs, and like particularly the right hand side is like more puffy. It definitely it looks like do you know what teasing is for hair?
Yeah.
It looks like she teased her hair a little bit, and like I would like it almost looks like she had Miranda and Mass Effect, the Legendary Edition, looks like she kind of had like a scene phase when she was a kid and she learned how to do her hair that way, and now she's an adult, has grown out of it, but she still kind of teases her hair a little bit too much.
That is the most oddly specific thing I've ever heard you say about Mass Effect. That is possibly...
Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I think I'm astonished that you were that accurate in your description. That is one of those things that like people are going to think this is a weird statement, but it's true. This is one of those things that only a woman could ever say. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's a level of detail in that where like, and I don't even know if you were insulting her or complimenting her.
No,
because I think it's maybe
insulting.
both.
Yeah. I judge the scene. No offense to the scene girls. The hair looks fucking stupid. It looks like a cute
No, that was fantastic.
I shouldn't talk because how I do my hair in the morning. I brush it. The end.
So Miranda's hair is different. Especially when you look at side by side stuff like this, obviously Mass Effect 2 looks better. It does. The lighting and the shadows are much better. It's a better overall visual experience. But you play these games in order. It's called Mass Effect 2. It's following Mass Effect 1, and Mass Effect 1 looks so good that I think people should prepare themselves for actually a little bit of I won't use the word downgrade. It's just not as impressive as the new additions in Mass Effect 1. Yeah. And then in Mass Effect 3, from what I've seen, again, very briefly, in Mass Effect 3, because that automatic upconversion process has higher resolution original textures to work with, Mass Effect 3 actually does look like a more impressive leap. So there you go.
There we go. All right. Well, I guess my final question for you is overall, because I know when we talked about it and talked about the remaster and like would we buy it, would we not, blah 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 blah. I have no idea what we said. I did intend to go look up what we said, but things got in the way. Here we are. Deal with it. Good show that you're doing today. But overall, would you say, is this worth it? Was this worth I believe it's $70 or is it $60? I think I can't.
$60.
$60. Is this worth the $60 for the upgrade?
Oh, I think for anyone who has any interest in a science fiction role-playing game, this is the best $60 you could possibly spend. This might be the best $60 in the history of video games if you like science fiction action role-playing games. Whether you've played Mass Effect before or not. Unless you're someone who only ever likes to play something once and you never like playing stuff again, that's the only situation in which I would tell someone not to get this. If you like science fiction action role-playing games, you should play Mass Effect Legendary Edition, like without a doubt. And if you played Mass Effect before, again, like Mass Effect 1 in particular will feel new to you. At least I think it will, in my opinion. So totally worth it.
Is there any reason to go play the old stuff other than it obviously being cheaper?
No, I think this is now the definitive way to play. I think that the one question is how much the modding scene is going to transition over. Mm-hmm. Because I think this is the definitive way to play. But what you asked was, is there any reason to play the old versions? I would say yes. There are some reasons because the Mass Effect 3 modding scene in particular is extensive. Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the Mass Effect 3 modding scene. I mean, like having, or even the Mass Effect 1 and 2 modding scene, like having the new iconic default FemShep head from Mass Effect 3 and Mass Effect 1 and 2, modders did that first. Mm-hmm. That's been available with mods for like a few years now. There's like, they put the Pathfinder armor from Andromeda into Mass Effect 3. Like they've done some really cool stuff in the modding scene. So yes, there are still reasons to go and play on PC. On console, I don't think there's any reason anymore.
Yeah.
On PC, there's still reasons because of mods. If the modding scene moves over to the Legendary Edition, similar to the way that the Skyrim modding scene eventually moved over to Special Edition, then I think that'll do it pretty much. Then it'll all be Legendary Edition.
All right. Well, I guess with that, like, is there anything else you want to add on to the discussion of Legendary Edition?
Just to close, like, I do remember kind of what I said about the potential for a remaster, and I was always very lukewarm on it. I always said, I probably won't even play it because what are they really going to do other than do higher resolution textures? And we already have that with modded PC. I mean, I was wrong about that. This fully surpassed my expectations. This is way more than I ever expected. Even when they did the official announcement of the remaster, I live reacted to that with Jackdaw. And, it was like, okay, cool, wait and see, like, what the specifics are going to be. Like, I was not excited until they did the first gameplay trailer comparison. And ultimately, this surpassed my expectations for what I ever thought we would get for a Mass Effect remaster. So, like, 2 thumbs up for me. I never thought I was going to be this hyped for it. This is ranking up there with some of the highest, like, out of all my playthroughs of Mass Effect, like, obviously the first couple ones are ranked up pretty high. The first time I played on PC with mods, that ranks up there pretty high as far as, like, the most fun I've ever had playing it. But this is right up there with those 2 examples of, like, the most fun and the most enjoyment I've ever had playing Mass Effect again. So, like, yeah, I definitely never expected it to be this good. This has surpassed all my expectations about what the remaster could be. Not perfect, because as I said, there's some stuff that's just, you shake your head at it, and it's not perfect, but it definitely overall surpasses my expectations, and it's more than what I thought we were going to get.
Yeah. Well, now I'm just like, I guess I'm still kind of lukewarm on, like, a Dragon Age remaster. I don't want to go, like, into a whole conversation like this, but I guess something I underestimated when we were first talking about this is just the new content factor, where people are just really excited to play the thing you like again, and, like, having that community of being like, oh, you like this part, I like this part too, let's talk about that. And it was really cool for, like, that. Like, it was probably like a week of people just being really excited about Mass Effect. And, like, even I was like, you know what, I had really no interest in Melee. And now I'm like, maybe it would be fun to play again. Like, just jumping into the hype like everybody else. So, like, seeing that again with, like, a Dragon Age game would be kind of cool. So, like, I really like the mods you can have with Origin and 2 and Inquisition and stuff like that. But maybe just to see something new and something fresh to, like, liven up the community is actually a bigger deal than I gave it credit for.
I honestly, I want it for Dragon Age so bad. To just, like, real quickly touch on this portion of it too, like, #1 global seller on Steam. Like, Mass Effect Legendary Edition hit #1 global seller on Steam. It had the highest number of concurrent players that any Mass Effect release has ever had in any of its history. It was, thousands of people streaming it on Twitch, thousands of people streaming it on YouTube. I streamed day 1 right at launch, and
you got a lot of viewers.
It's like over 400 people at one point.
Which is the highest we've ever had on anything.
I think we had higher after the Dragon Age 4 teaser trailer.
Did, though. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. It was still
very high. Yeah, the interest for Mass Effect was and is so high. It's so much higher than it's been in a long time. People are kind of, nobody's really talking about, oh, Andromeda, my face is tired. Like, yeah, let's put that behind us in the history. Let's remind everybody why Mass Effect is so great. Like, I want that so much for Dragon Age. Mm-hmm. And from a business standpoint, look, EA said a couple of years ago, they said it in their investor calls, we think that there's a real opportunity for remasters or remakes for some of our iconic franchises. They've done it with Command & Conquer. They've now done it with Mass Effect. It's a part of their business strategy. It has included Bioware. Bioware has now shown that they can do it at a high level. People don't like cheap remasters. They don't like putting a filter on it and just throwing it out there. So Bioware has proven they can do it at a high level.
Yeah, to be honest with this, I would say Melee has been a huge success, and I guess I would be surprised if we don't see a Dragon Age remaster. I just think it's going to be different on how they do it, and I don't know how it's going to be. Because, like, Mass Effect's so easy, because it's, like, a nice little bundle. It's all 3 games. You just put it to the side. Like, here it is, easy to package. Dragon Age doesn't really have that easy to package, and did we talk about this on the podcast, or was this before we were talking? But, like, it's different engines. You know, so it's a little bit more awkward and clunky, and, like, I feel like there's a lot more congruence with the Mass Effect games than there is the Dragon Age games, where all 3 are wildly different. So I don't know how they're going to do that. Like, I think it would actually make more sense for a Dragon Age remaster to, like, come out a la carte rather than all in one. So you have all the Origins, all of 2, all of Inquisition, all 3. Maybe they're not, 60 each, but it's like, I don't know, 30 each. I don't even know what. But I guess that would make more sense to me because they're so different. But who knows what they actually end up doing.
Yeah, I agree it's going to be harder for all the reasons you just stated. My hope, and I don't know if they could do this exactly, but if they released Dragon Age Origins with all of the DLC, which includes the Awakenings expansion pack, kind of like it's not that it's as big as a whole game, but like you've got Origins, you've got Awakenings, all other DLC, and then Dragon Age 2 with all of its DLC, which includes a couple of, decent-sized expansion packs, if you will, DLC storylines, and just release that. Even at a $60 price point, if they gave both of those games the treatment that they gave Mass Effect 1, they could take my money. Like, take my money. They got my $60 ASAP.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would probably buy it because it's on Dragon Age. But yeah, no, totally. Even Inquisition, like, we're getting too into this.
We'll save it for another episode.
We gotta wrap this up, whatever. Okay, well, this is definitely a conversation we want to continue. I know we're just like, I'm just shutting it down because I need to go. But I think we'll come back to this. I think it's something a lot of people have been thinking of. EA Play, side note, EA Play is, EA Bioware is not at E3. They're at EA Play 90% of the time, pretty much the entire time. EA Play has been the weekend before or after E3, except for this year, it's a month after E3.
Oh, it's in July?
Yeah, it's in July 22nd, I think. So, very strange. So, like, who knows what gets announced at EA Play? Like, maybe they do say, like, the Dragon Age Origins, bitches, you wanted it, we like money, here we go! I don't know.
Yeah.
So, who knows what they do? But, yeah. Yeah, which on that, maybe we have 2 episodes. We have an E3 episode and we have an EA Play episode. I don't know how that's going to go.
Could be fun.
Yeah. We'll talk about it then. Anyway, Jordan, now that you've been making a ton of Mass Effect videos, you've had like 3 come out in a week, which is like...
I mean, for me, 3 is a ton.
Yeah. I mean, legitimately, though.
3 videos is a lot. Like, I've been joking around, people in the comments going, hey, man, it's glad to see you back. I'm like, well, all they have to do is just release Mass Effect things, and then I'll make videos again.
I get it. But where can they watch this new beautiful content?
Of course, they can find me on YouTube at The Exalted March.
All right, and
where can folks find you, Caitie?
I don't know, if you like Dragon Age or some shit like that, you can go over to Ghildirthalen, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. And you can also watch Jordan's live streams of all the Melee editions on Codex Added, which is where you're watching this on YouTube. We never plug that. I feel like we should plug that more.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because I think most people still listen to the show on YouTube, but we're also on all the podcasting services. So
yeah, so if you're strictly just on the podcasting services, like it, I don't know, it's kind of a weird one. It's either the channel you're on now or who knows.
Look for Codex Added on YouTube, and we do live streams here also.
Yeah, so I do Dragon Age. He does Mass Effect, and then sometimes we come together and stream some bullshit. Yeah, so anyway, with that, everyone, Durasher.